This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Geary McCabe. I'd like to call our meeting to order at 9:32. Opportunity for public comment. Do we have anything for public comment? Callie?
We have 10 people online and no public
No
comment.
comments? Welcome, everybody online. Next is the action item regarding approval of the minutes from September 11th. Anybody that have any objections to the meeting minutes? Anything to add or anything that we missed? A motion to approve? Make a motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And I just gotta say, my fourth meeting, I finally got that whole part right. Okay, discussion on the action item, agenda number 4. We already did that. That's the meeting minutes. I guess we approved them. I need to sign them and we'll be good to go. Next slide.
This one right here, the meeting schedule.
Oh, the meeting schedule. That was something that added. So the meeting schedule, we set up the schedule for the meetings for next year. I'm gonna hand this to Anita because she worked on it.
Thank y'all so much. At the last meeting, we had suggested a different schedule, and I went and looked over at TxDOT's BPAC meetings, and I was trying to align our future meetings about 2.5 weeks after their meeting. So the new proposed meeting dates are February the 12th, May the 14th, August the 13th, and November the 12th. That aligns us a little closer with what is happening in BPAC, and perhaps that we could leverage some of those presentations for our work. Any discussion on that? Can you repeat that?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like keep us focused on like trends that are going on throughout the state
Yes.
this year.
I get a motion for approval of the meeting schedule.
So moved. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Keller and
Mike.
thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we have a motion for approval. No, messed that up. Okay, agenda item number 5, we have a new BPAC member request. James Wickham from the IHOP. You were here last time too, September?
That was one of the KTMPO meetings, I don't think that would be tax specifically.
So we have to consider approval.
Usually you already have this approved because you approved me as the new president next year already. Do you have anything you want to fill us in on?
Just that the HOP has a recent initiative with the microtransit initiative, and we're hoping to assist with your plans in the BPAC and help with the bicycles since we have racks on our buses, and still have I think we still have a bunch of the shelter racks that were given to us a couple of years ago.
Consider approval for a new BPAC member?
What's a shelter rack?
I'm sorry?
What's a shelter rack?
Oh, they're these the little bicycle racks that went next to the shelters. I think they had some over in Nolanville.
Yeah, okay. I just.
Now, on your microtransit, just as a question, are you guys going to have the ability to transport bicycles with that?
Yeah, we have some of our vehicles now currently have bike racks on them. So if somebody puts in a request for a trip, they can just add it, they have a bicycle, and we'll make sure that's it when it has a rack on it.
Awesome. I didn't ask that last time, but yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, we used to have an IHOP member on the committee, so, or somebody from IHOP was one of our members, so I'm glad you're back.
Well, actually, y'all, it's HOP, the HOP.
I was the wrong meeting then.
Anybody online have any questions?
No, I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Jason seconds. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nobody? Welcome to the BPAC.
Thank you.
Happy to have you, James.
Happy to be here.
And then, sorry, I'm a little tore up today. It's been a rough year.
We're happy that you're here.
Yeah.
Press,
Sorry.
thank you.
It's been a rough year this year, just so everybody knows, so I'm a little tore up right now from not being able to sleep. So agenda item number 6, TxDOT Bike and Ped Count Enrollment Program. We're going to have a presentation by Robert Benz. We saw this down in Austin a couple months ago at their little meeting, so I'll hand it over to him.
He's online, Kelly.
Yes, and if I can share my screen.
Doesn't look like Texas.
Okay.
The hill country right there. So we saw this down in Austin for why we were trying to get this set up. We saw him down in Austin. We actually went through one of his counters down in Austin. And it's a great program for cities to utilize, in my opinion, to find out where all your traffic's going. And if you successfully put your trail or whatever you've installed in the right place, to get the counting, get the count and how much it's used and how often.
Are y'all able to see my screen now?
Not yet, we see you. Oh,
There it is.
it's working. The team is working on it.
Okay. Looks like it's doing a dual screen for some reason. Let's see. I'm not as familiar on how to do the share screen with this platform.
I can just click through if I take over the presentation. If you just say next slide, I can click to it. If that works here.
So Callie said she can put the slides up, and if you just say next slide, she'll go ahead and,
Okay.
Next slide.
Okay. Perfect. So should I stop sharing this screen, or can y'all even see that?
Yes, if
Yeah.
you'll stop sharing and give control back over to Callie, that would be great.
Okay. Sorry.
No worries, sir, thank you.
Okay.
Just give Callie a second, she'll get it all straightened out, but you can be talking if you like, sir.
Okay. Yeah. My name's Robert Benz. I'm a senior transportation research engineer with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. And I've been with TTI for almost 35 years and have been doing bike ped for a little over a dozen. And we started working with TxDOT about 5 years ago or so on a research project that's kind of stemmed into kind of a whole count program. So this is, you're kind of getting hopefully a little more mature version of it. It was pretty rough in the beginning, but so we're making progress. Next slide. So just go through a presentation outline. I'll go through some of the potential uses that y'all might use the data. I'm sure y'all already have some of those ideas in your head. Talk about the different count technologies. There's permanent counters and portable counters, and we'll talk about each. The loan program, which I know y'all are interested in. And then what y'all easy thing and just real low-hanging fruit is the Count Exchange, which is a database graphical map that has all the counts that have been done at least over the past 5 years. So there's historical data in wherever we've done counts, right? And other people have done counts. So we're trying to gather. We're a clearinghouse, if you will, for bicycle and pedestrian count data. So we're trying to get data from, MPOs like here in Houston, HJC has a series of counters, NCT COG has some counters, Rio Grande Valley has some. So we're pulling in all those pieces of information in addition to TxDOT's counters both on the permanent and the temporary side. So we're able to, hopefully y'all can use this to leverage each other on this count program and be able to share data hopefully seamlessly. Some of the opportunities, and it looks like Noah's on the schedule as well to talk about the different the TA grants and so on. But better data makes better decisions. So we need to understand the problems. How many people are out there walking and biking? I mean, I always get that question. We got a bunch. Well, how many's in a bunch? You know, is that 10 or is that 10,000? You know, it's different. It's up for interpretation. But when we put numbers to it, it means a lot more. And then we can get the information on when and where and what time of day, day of week, all these different parameters that will help us make those good decisions with that information. So we're looking at tracking trends. We can help with design, long-term performance measures. A lot of this stuff has been done in the motor vehicle world for, 5-6 decades or more. And so we're slowly starting to get up to speed on that in the bike ped world. And Texas is one of the leaders in that. So next slide. So some of the use case examples, and these are getting more specific to actual kind of studies and those kinds of things. Shoulder conversion. So if you have a shoulder and a development comes in and says, hey, we want to put a right turn lane in there, people say, sure, go ahead. Well, if you knew that you had some bike groups that were using that, you might say, you can put that right turn bay in, but we're going to need you to put a bike lane in over here because we know that we have some activity going on there. In some cases, that may not be the case. Any kind of warrants, almost all the different warrants, traffic signal warrants, hawks, flashing rectangular beacons, etc., all have a pedestrian or bicycle activity type measure that they want to see some minimum level so that you're use good use of your funds. Are you detecting any safety issues? Are people riding the wrong way on your bike lanes? That way people aren't expecting them. Different countermeasures work with these things. What kind of facility design types do people like? And so if you're measuring, say, shared use path and a bike lane and a sidewalk, and you find your shared use paths are you getting 10 times the utilization, that seems like something people are liking. Maybe you should do more of that. So I think that'll help you guide your decisions there. So there's a whole list of ideas there on different uses that have been used over the years. And so that'll be just a reference, and you'll have this presentation that you can refer back to. Next slide. So the TxDOT alternative program is a funding source. Counters are eligible for it. So that might be a way, if you're going to put in a facility, a larger facility, you can go ahead and maybe include a counter in there. And those are just two examples of our permanent counters. The one on the left is what we call an urban post, and that's the one we prefer because all the electronics are up out of the ground, out of the dirt, out of the water. The one on the right is what they call a natural post, and all the electronics are in the ground. We have not had good luck with that in Texas. They last about a year or two, and then the water starts getting in, and even though they're supposed to be waterproof, it seems to infiltrate. So next slide. All right. So these are two examples of permanent counters. The one on the left is bike only, and we use those on, this happens to be a rural FM road outside of Houston. And the one on the right is can be used on a wide sidewalk, shared use path, those kinds of things. You can see the loops cut into the concrete that picks up the cyclists, and the post, there's a passive infrared sensor in that post that detects the pedestrians. The permanent counters can distinguish modes, bikes or peds, the different travel directions, inbound or outbound. We've got a long history. They're pretty solid piece of equipment. There is some maintenance, right? We got to buy batteries, we got to buy cell service. These do have data transmission, so we're getting data every day, every night at midnight roughly. And then obviously you've got the cost of the counter and the maintenance or the installation cost. So those counters have actually kind of kicked up here in the past with inflation, and they're running about 7,000 to 7,500 these days. The temp counters, next slide, sorry. So our portable counters or short-term counters are two different types. The one on the left is road tubes. Those are similar to our traffic counting road tubes. And we put them out in a pattern where we have two tubes with a small distance, 1 foot in between them. We know the distance between those, so we can, we're essentially picking up a classification of vehicle, and that vehicle happens to be a bicycle. So they're specially tuned algorithm to pick up cyclists based on speed and axle length. And then the one on the right it basically counts anything with a heat signature that moves. So if there's a person on a bike, it'll count it. If there's a pedestrian, it'll count it, those kinds of things. So it'll count everything. On these temporary counts, most of the motor vehicle counts, we count one day. With the bike and ped stuff, we needed at least 2 weekends and at least 1 full week. We'd like to get 2 weeks because of the large variability in the count data. It's not uncommon to have 100% variation from day to day. One day you've got 10 people out there, and the next day you got 20 or something like that, right? So it's 100% variation, and that requires more data to get better averages. So next slide. So the loan program, we've got a variety of equipment, as we talked about. We've got actually probably about 60 of these passive infrared counters now, 20 pneumatic tube counters, and they're for loan for local agencies. Other agencies have loan programs, TxDOT, HGAC, NCT COG, and a few others across the state. Next slide. And so I mentioned before the Count Exchange. It's a basically data warehouse where we put all the count data from all agencies, both temporary, permanent, etc. And that's at the website down there at the bottom, that link. But you click on any one of those counties and up will pop a zoomed in version with dots. I think the circles are temp counts and the squares are permanent counters. We've got about 200 permanent sites and probably about 800 temp sites now. This is just a more pretty format. Next slide. This is just a pretty format of the data that we can get. If you click on a site, we can get this kind of information from it. It's got a better web interface that you can kind of select the time and date range that you're looking for. You can kind of zoom in and understand a little bit more. It's a lot more interactive on the web, but this can be a PDF version if you needed to, bring it to or provide it to a city council member, those kinds of things. Hopefully pretty simple and self-explanatory format. You got time of day, day of week, This is the permanent count version, so we've got that long history of over a year. We can distinguish by mode in most cases on those. There's also some other tools there. We have an AGO, ArcGIS Online, and that's on TxDOT's website, where we have a list of all the, or a geographical layer of all the different count locations. And it's got a little bit very high level data. I think it's just got average weekday and average weekend values, and I think we go back 5 years on that. So if you're using ArcGIS, you can help do some different layers with that. Next slide. This is the kind of report form for the temporary counters. Again, typically we're going to do about 2 weeks worth of data there. If we have, say, bicycles, we can get directions. We can see times of day, day of week, those kinds of patterns as well. We're also getting that average weekday and average weekend count, so that you can help do that. Next slide. There you go. And so my question to y'all is, are you counting yet? And if you are, we want to know about it, and we want you to put your information into the database so that others in your region can use it. TxDOT can use it as well to find out and maybe compare it against other cities or towns or counties of your similar size. It helps with our overall statewide planning. If you've got questions about counters, where to put them, how to install them, all those kinds of stuff, TTI is a resource for you. We can help you get started on any size or count program that you are thinking about. Next slide. And again, here's just some resources. The Ped Bike Count Exchange, PBCX is kind of the nickname for it. There's also on the TxDOT website a lot of videos on how to install counters, both permanent and temporary. We've got research reports. We've got a lot of documents up there. We've also got of course, staff contact information, both TTI and TxDOT, and you've got the links there as well. And if you just Google TxDOT bike ped counts, it'll take you to all this stuff. So, obviously Google's our friend, so it helps you get to the data you need. Next slide. And this count data in most cases is, we're at our infancy. We don't have a lot of data. And so we're trying to look at all sorts of different data sources, not only our actual counts, but we're looking at some of what we call the crowdsource, the cell phone data, the app data, that kind of stuff. It tends to be highly biased. Strava is been around for 5+ years. They tend to be, male users, almost always 100% recreational, and they a lot of times don't represent your typical users. The average household income is over 200,000, so it's not your typical person sometimes. But we're trying to develop this loan program, the training, etc. So we're trying to fill that gap of our missing data. Some of the newer data sources, with Replica, Streetlight, some of the others, they've all kind of come out with products claiming they're great stuff, and so far we haven't seen it. They don't represent, and even they've come to us and said, hey, we need your data to help calibrate our models. So they need more ground truth data to improve what they're doing. They're just not quite there yet. But it can be a source. It can be a help. But I'm not sure. I've seen the data, and it has the numbers are all over the board. Sometimes they're way high, sometimes they're way low. And sometimes that Goldilocks, they're just right, but but they're really not very consistent on it. So next slide, and with that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? I have a bunch. You said you're using Strava data. Have you guys gotten with the iFig crowd or the Garmin and pulled their data, or gotten with them to see if you can pull their data?
We have not. Those again tend to be the fitness apps, and this is TxDOT. We're mainly focused on transportation activities. So we've been also going towards, instead of trying to get a single app like Garmin or others, we go to an aggregator like Streetlight that is pulling cell phone data from everybody's cell phones, or GM cars or different areas. They're getting these street lights, and the different aggregators of the world actually are pulling all that information in, and trying to use it to resell their products. And TxDOT has licenses to those some of those products. TTI has been helping them with investigating utilization, accuracy, et cetera, on a variety of both motor vehicle side and on the bike ped side as well.
And my last question, do you guys track any information on when you put the counters in, or the community puts in the counters in, how much that has affected the change in the bike or pedestrian movement to expand that project, or confirm or deny that you put it in the right spot? Or you need to put it in that.
Yeah, if I understand your question, that if you put a counter in, do people come? That part we wouldn't know. But does it help with the planning process? Yes. I mean, we've one of the slides showed an example in Houston where they had a 5-foot sidewalk. It was utilized by both bikes and peds, and TxDOT came in and put a 8-foot shared use path there along that facility, and we did see probably a 20-30% bump in utilization. Again, we'd love to have more of those before and after studies. Construction takes a long time, and we don't get a lot of feedback on, hey, we put a counter out here, now we've got a new facility, come back out here and recount it. So we need that feedback loop from y'all as well, to help us out with that.
You answered the question. Sorry, I phrased it wrong, but yeah, you got the question right.
Okay.
You got the answer right.
Okay.
Anybody online with a question?
Yeah, have you had counts long enough to identify any trends?
Yes and no. It depends on the area and depends on the counter. We certainly, like during COVID, yes, we saw a spike that's kind of come back down to pre-COVID levels. The data is highly variable, and even from year to year, we're seeing a lot of variation. So bikes and peds are a very difficult beast to tackle because of the extreme variation with them. Our motor vehicle traffic is much, we can see trends over longer period. There's less variation in the data. So we have to weigh how much variation we've got, and we've got limited amount, right? We don't have near as many bike ped counters out there as we do motor vehicles. So counters. So we're kind of struggling at both ends of the statistical curve. So, but yes, we do see some trends. Certainly, and y'all the locals may see it better than we do because you know what's going on. But example in Austin, every time is it ACL, Austin City Limits or whatever? I mean, it's 10,000-fold higher. And we see that spike for 2 weeks, right? In that period of time when that festival is going on. And it's very consistent. So, and we see different patterns like that. And sometimes we know what's going on, sometimes we don't. And so we need help from the locals to tell us, what those local conditions are and what's going on.
We have one more question.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Would it be beneficial if for a city that doesn't really have bike paths, but they have one specific event, I'm talking about Gatesville, the fire ant tour, would it be beneficial to bring in your counters specifically for that event, just so that it can show how it brings in the bikes, how much traffic that one event brings in, so that it's, specific year time event, but just to kind of have it in your system, but then use for grants and things later on. Does that make sense?
What kind of event was it? I didn't.
It's called the Fire Ant Tour. It's held by the Gatesville Exchange Club. It's once a year in June. And the amount of foot traffic for that has increased in the last couple of years, but we don't have any bike paths there in Gatesville. So with it being the one event that actually brings bikes in, would it be beneficial to have your bike counters there just for that event, just so that that data could be used for grant purposes later?
It could be beneficial. It's always helpful to have the data whenever you're applying for the grant, so that you can say, hey, here's what a normal day looks like. Here's what the event day looks like. I don't, a lot of people aren't going to, and I won't speak for TxDOT, but I mean, a lot of agencies aren't going to fund a project for a, one weekend event or something like that, right? Now your county or city might, because they find the economic value to that kind of thing. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. It's helpful, right? Now I will say that these counters, we typically need, I mean, like if it's a big festival type thing, we typically can't count that. We need like people walking down a sidewalk where there's not a lot of motion in the background, and it's almost like a brake beam type scenario. Same thing with the bicycles, right? If you're trying to, the better example would be is if you're trying to measure how many people come to a plaza or a town square or something. Those, I mean, people are going everywhere. It's very difficult to count those because there's no real entrance or exits. And we can count entrances and exits because you're funneling everybody through an area, right? And that way they can be counted. A bridge is a great place to count people because you're funneling them through, a small area, and you can count them walking across the bridge. That help answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Right.
And thank you for the presentation, Robert. We appreciate the knowledge and information.
Okay. Call us if you need any help, and we can help, identify locations. We're always looking for, and TxDOT's doing district bike plans and throughout the state over the coming several years. And so as those things come in, we're going to need to know where your facilities are and how we can help count, those to help TxDOT do that planning, and y'all do the local planning.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Robert.
Thank you.
Speaking of TxDOT, agenda item number 7, we have Noah, who's going to talk about the selection criteria for the 2025 TA call for projects. I believe he's online.
Morning, everyone. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Do y'all want me to share my screen or do you want to handle it? Okay, I'll just ask
Callie's
you
gonna
to.
Callie's gonna do it, so anytime you need the next slide, just tell Callie and she'll go ahead and flip it for you.
Okay, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. My name's Noah Heath. I'm the Transportation Alternatives Program Manager here at TxDOT. We're in the Public Transportation Division. I'll be presenting today about our upcoming call for projects. Next slide. For the agenda on this presentation, I'll be talking about our anticipated funding for this call, the project categories, the tentative schedule, and then we do have technical assistance resources available, and so I want to highlight those so that y'all can utilize those resources if you're looking at projects to submit for this upcoming call. Next slide. So the transportation alternative funding, TxDOT administers TA funds for locally sponsored bicycle and pedestrian planning and infrastructure projects in communities throughout the state. Projects submitted in our call for projects need to be principally for transportation rather than a solely recreational project. These facilities are used for recreation, and that's fine if you have a facility that's used for transportation and recreation. But the facility needs to be connected to the transportation network so that users can use it for transit as well as recreation. The projects have to be beneficial to the general public and accessible to the general public. Projects can be on system or off system. So any project in your community is whether it's on a TxDOT system or not, would be eligible. Next slide. For this upcoming call, we are anticipating approximately $250 million to be made available. This represents our anticipated funding for fiscal years 2027 through 2029. The table on the slide shows how it's broken down into sub-allocated categories. FHWA designates a certain amount of funding based on the population for the whole state and the representation in each of these groups. So non-urban areas, communities of 5,000 or less outside of transportation management areas, we anticipate approximately $43.5 million being available for projects in those communities. Small urban, these are cities or communities of 5,000 to 49,999 that are outside of the transportation management areas. We anticipate approximately 20 million. And then medium urban, 50,000 to 200,000 outside of TMAs, we anticipate approximately 20 million. And then we have a larger pot of funding that are designated as any area funds that can be utilized anywhere in the state, any of the population areas I just described, but also larger metro areas, urbanized areas, communities inside of those transportation management areas. And we're anticipating approximately 167 million for that category. Next slide. If you're familiar with our previous call for projects, we had 4 project categories. We are planning to continue with those project categories. Community-based projects are bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects with a project cost ranging from $250,000 to $5 million. Sidewalks, bike lanes, shared use paths, those type of core infrastructure projects, but generally less than 5 million in project cost. For large scale, these are projects that are range from 5 million to 25 million. We would anticipate and expect these projects to have a very beneficial and highly beneficial impact in the communities they're implemented. Be transformative for pedestrian or bicycle networks in those communities, and be able to tackle some of the bigger barriers that you need that level of funding to address. So these might be bike ped bridges going over an interstate or a rail line, or a river or something that in the past, was cost prohibitive. Regional trails that stretch along a long distance, connections to multimodal hubs that help bring bicycle and pedestrians to other transit modes. Network enhancements, these would be quick build enhancements to existing bicycle or pedestrian networks. So they might be safety upgrades, improving crosswalks so that they're high visibility, improving pedestrian signals, maybe upgrading a buffered bike lane to a separated bike lane, expanding bike share programs, those types of things that enhance existing facilities and can be quick wins, either a quick safety improvement or an installation that really attracts additional users and upgrades those facilities. And then we also have funding available for planning. Many communities, especially smaller communities, don't have the funding to prioritize a bicycle or pedestrian plan. So we do have funding available for that. So this would be any sort of planning study that addresses bicycle or pedestrians as the focus of that plan. So it could be a safe routes to school plan, a pedestrian safety action plan, an ADA transition plan, or it could be like a community-wide active transportation plan. So the various plans focused on bicycle and pedestrians. Next slide. So for the various project categories, we the eligibility for the large scale network enhancements and the planning categories, those categories are eligible to all communities throughout Texas. For the community base, in the past, we have made a change here. In the past, we only communities outside of those transportation management areas were eligible to submit applications in that community-based category, because areas that are designated as transportation management areas also receive TA funding from MPOs. This time around, we've expanded that to communities. If it's a smaller community inside of a transportation management area of 50,000 or less, then those communities are also eligible to submit in that community-based category. And we heard from a lot of communities, smaller communities, and the TMAs that they would either they had a hard time competing with some of the larger communities in those areas for the transportation alternative funds, or there were limited transportation alternative funds inside of the TMA. So we wanted to expand that eligibility a little bit and give those smaller communities that opportunity. And I know that Nolanville specifically had communicated to us, their sort of the bind they were in with trying to find available funding for their sidewalk or shared use path that fell into this category. So we we've expanded that eligibility, and hope that those communities can also take advantage of that project category. Local government, school districts, transit agencies, smaller MPOs that represent less than 200,000 in population. So the MPOs that do not get the transportation alternative funding are eligible as a project sponsor. TxDOT is eligible as a project sponsor, but it has to be at the request of a other eligible project sponsor. So basically, like a small city may request TxDOT be its project sponsor because they feel like they don't have the technical, they don't have the capacity in their community to submit the application and go through the federal processes to use the funding. So they can request that TxDOT act as a project sponsor on their behalf. That would be up to the TxDOT district if they agree to do that. Often it's for projects that are on system. So it would be like a mutually beneficial type project. But that's something that TxDOT can do if the TxDOT district agrees to it. Preliminary engineering and construction are eligible activities for the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. For network enhancements, we're looking at more installation, quick builds. So the preliminary engineering would not be an eligible reimbursement under this program. We would expect that the local government would already be working on that design if design was needed for it. Some of these projects don't really need design or need very little design if they're just implementing, upgraded elements to existing signals or expanding the bike share program. Items like that can be installed without extensive design. And then any of the planning studies related to bicycle and pedestrian activities are also eligible. Next slide. So these are our focus areas. These are pretty similar to the ones that we had last time around. We want to encourage local governments to submit projects that improve safety, accessibility, or mobility for all ages and abilities, including projects that support TxDOT's American with Disabilities Act, TxDOT's Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, and other safety initiatives. Projects that integrate and improve access to public transit. Safe routes to school type projects that enhance bicycle and pedestrian access and safety to school related designations. And then segments identified as part of Texas's bicycle tourism trails network. Next slide. It is a two-step application process. So we have our preliminary applications. We plan to have those ready at the beginning of January for y'all to complete. This is like a high-level 3-page application where you provide a ballpark estimate, some of the details of the project. We do require that you include a link to like a Google map of the project so that we can get the location. After those applications are submitted and reviewed for eligibility, you will meet with your TxDOT district to talk about the project and get feedback. Once your project is gone through that process and considered eligible to move on to step 2, there is the more detailed application that will be due June 20th, I think is our date. And this would be the application where you would include a lot more project details, the supporting attachments, so that we can verify information in the application. And this is the application that would be scored and ranked against other projects that are submitted, so that we can develop a recommended list for our commission. Next slide. These safety criteria are similar to or the same as our criteria we used last time. Safety is a big part of the criteria when we review the projects, connectivity and accessibility, project readiness. We have to obligate these funds 3 years after TxDOT receives them. So we want to make sure we're funding projects that can meet that timeline and be implemented, and developed fairly quickly. So project readiness is a big part of what we're looking at when we're scoring these projects. And then also we look at geographic equity, community support, and planning. All this information, if you go to our 2023 guide, you can see the scoring criteria we used for our last call. And I think that would be helpful as you start to think of projects that you might want to submit. We will have our new program guide available when the call for projects kicks off. Next slide. So this is our schedule. We plan to kick off the call January 3rd. The preliminary application would be due February 21st. There would be a few months where TxDOT would review and you would attend those district meetings. And then you would have a little over 2 months to complete the detailed application, which would be due June 20th. And then we review those projects over the summer, develop a recommended list, and are targeting October 2025 for commission action. Next slide. So we do have technical assistance funds available. Those technical assistance opportunities can occur during the district review of your preliminary application. So during the district review, we do have an engineering consultant that may be able to provide additional review of your budget, provide information about feasibility of construction of your project, and we'll be focusing on smaller disadvantaged communities to utilize these technical assistance resources. So during that preliminary application process, communication with your district, if you think you may need those resources, is important so that we can set that up for you. Next slide. We also plan to make transportation development credits available. This program does require a 20% match, but we can utilize transportation development credits on projects that are eligible. And those projects will benefit from 100% federal funded project, so they have zero local match requirement. They may have a responsibility for overruns on the project if the project goes over the awarded amount, but initially, the project would be 100% covered. We'll release which communities are eligible for those TDCs when we open the call. We use a criteria very similar to what's used for our economic disadvantaged county program here at TxDOT. Next slide. We have upcoming workshops. We did a webinar in October. That recording is on our website if you want to look at a more detailed presentation. It's about an hour long. We'll have workshops that are scheduled in January once the call is open. 2 of them are virtual, and then we have 5 in person. We'll have one in Arlington at the North Central Texas Council of Governments and one at the Austin district office. So those are probably the two closest for y'all to attend. If you want to attend in person, if you prefer the virtual or it's just too hard to make one of those in person, too far a distance, then the virtuals will be, we'll cover the same information and they'll be live, so we'll be able to answer any questions you may have in that setting as well. And we sent out communications yesterday on the details of these workshops. So I can send those out to everyone in attendance of this meeting as well. I'll get with Anita on that, and we'll try to make sure y'all get that if y'all haven't already. Next slide. This is our TA team here at the division. Also on the call, we have Daniel with the Waco district. He is your primary contact at the Waco district. So he's also a good point person if you have any questions or need additional information from us. But I'm open to any questions right now if anyone has any initially.
I have a couple of questions. One is, how does funding this round compare with the funding in the last round? And the second is, how do you measure the efficacy of funding? Do you have data to identify the value of it?
Like a cost benefit analysis, or what? How do you mean?
Yeah, what you regard as positive outcomes.
So we last time around we made available funding years fiscal year 2022 through 2026. So that was 5 years of funding, and so we ended up awarding $345 million in projects. This time around, it's fewer years of funding that we're making available. We're trying to get ahead of the funding because these projects take time to develop, so that once we receive that federal funding, we want to have projects in the pipeline ready. So we are making available a smaller amount of funds than what we awarded last time, but it's still a significant amount at $250 million. And then our analysis on the projects, where we're looking at, we really focus on the benefits of what those projects provide to the community. So in the scoring criteria, we want, if there's reported safety issues from crashes, we look at that. We look at the safety hazards that are currently at that location. The local government has to provide those to us. We look at the countermeasures that they're implementing to address those. We look at the connectivity. So how many destinations is this project connecting to? So we're really focused on that benefit side of the cost benefit analysis. We feel like as long as the projects are providing good benefit and connectivity, that they're worthwhile projects. And that's sort of how we address that. And then we, as far as our program, we're always striving to improve so that we can provide more assistance to help local governments and districts get these projects implemented in the most efficient way possible. And so that's kind of how we address that efficacy of where the funding's going.
One more question. Does the Infrastructure Improvement Act affect alternative transportation?
The IIJA? What was that question again?
Yes, it's 5J.
The,
5J.
it is, yeah, the infrastructure improvement.
Yeah, so that act is what the Transportation Alternatives Program is included in. It was also part of the FAST Act before the IIJA and the transportation bill before that. I think had a slightly different name for it, but the projects of this type have been in federal funding for the last 30 years. So the current transportation bill is the IIJA, and that's the one that sets up the guidance for this funding. And so we are projecting similar levels of funding out through fiscal year 2027 through 2029.
Thank you.
I have a question. On the disadvantaged communities, it says to get with the TxDOT district staff. How and who do I get in contact with?
So we'll look at that during the preliminary application phase. So you'll have an opportunity to meet with the Waco district or depending on which district your community's in. And at that time, you would, during those meetings where they're reviewing your project, that's kind of the opportunity to utilize some of those technical assistance funds. So I think the preliminary application, we have resources on our website. It's a fairly straightforward application and doesn't require a lot of additional resources in order to complete. And the budget estimate is just kind of a ballpark look at the cost of the project. But during that preliminary application meeting and phase would be kind of the time frame for when you would want to reach out to the Waco district, if that's where your project's located, to discuss availability of those technical assistance resources.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no, I appreciate the information and thanks for presenting to us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Noah.
Next, we have Charles. We met Charles at the meeting down in Austin a couple months ago. He's going to be talking about the xTexas Legacy Trail, and here he is.
Hey, Gary, y'all have to calm down a little bit. It's a little too rowdy in here.
Liven this up, man.
You got the adrenaline flowing there, don't you? Okay. Do I get to use the machine to click it?
Yes, right here.
Okay.
Just click on.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate the invitation to come talk about a project that is very exciting for me. I'm going to lay this out. I don't think you can get this on the camera probably, but I'll show another map up here in a moment. My background, I'm a native Texan. I live outside Seattle now, and I commute back. I'm a winter Texan these days because of this project. If any of you have had a kid since 1985, you have cursed me at least once, because I was in the legislature in 1983. I was the youngest member at the time. I was 23 years old, and I got to pass the child safety seat legislation that required the use of a child seat in the car. So you've been cursing me for 40 years now, and you've also been cursing me since 1990 because I created a thing called the Texas Bicycle Coalition, because I thought it'd be a good idea if Texas bicyclists weren't treated as second-class citizens. And in fact, we should have a voice at the table in political and financial conversations so that we have a safe place to ride on the streets. And I've gotten to make a living, a career out of promoting bicycling and walking as alternatives and helping cities and states and the feds
create funding opportunities such as what you're talking about right here. In the 90s, I got to lead a campaign that created that transportation alternatives category in the Federal Highway Transportation Fund at that time. And so that pays for about close to 100% of the bike lanes that are being done in the U.S. today on an 80-20 split. And I'm pretty proud of that. So motorists curse me because of my role in creating places where it doesn't take an athletic prowess to get across the street before the car hits you as a pedestrian or pushing a child in a stroller. Not everybody's been pleased with the way these things have turned out, and I'm certainly not convinced that we're finished with that. But today I want to talk about a project that I'm involved in now that has nothing to do, frankly, with TxDOT. This is an adventure route that I get to be one of the catalysts to create across the state of Texas. It's called the xTexas. It is a long-distance trail. Long-distance trails are something like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail. These are all 1,500 to 2,000 mile long trails. I can hike about 20 miles a day. And so with a couple of days off in a month, I can hike 500 miles. Are there any other can you imagine hiking 500 miles in a month? And then doing it the second month, and the third month, and the sixth month it takes to do the Continental Divide, or excuse me, the Pacific Crest Trail that goes from Mexico all the way through California, then Oregon, all the way to the Canadian border. People do this all the time now. I have a buddy that's a retired military chief named Jay France who just wrote this book about his 5 million steps on the Pacific Crest Trail 3 years ago. Jay and I have become good buddies. I met him on the north end, about 30 miles from the Canadian border. He and I have become friends on this, and he's part of our brain trust on this project. The type of trail that we're creating is 1,500 miles long. Right now, we're proofing the trail, so proofing the route. So this is changing as we're speaking. Basically, from the Texas border over here, north of Houston, this trail doesn't go through any cities. It just like these other adventure routes, they go past the cities, and there are routes that connect two cities. But in this case, we go north of Houston through the Big Thicket, come down through LaGrange. The trail has changed. It's going back up through San Marcos now instead of in Brumbles. Out into the hill country, down to Comfort, over to Lakey. This is the Devil's River, and that's the 750 mile mark. That's halfway on this trail. That's enough. That's enough. And for most people, that's beyond their imagination to even think about. But then beyond this is where the girls get separated from the women, because from here it gets dusty. There's no water, and there's no people to save you if you screw it up. And so I mentioned that this is an adventure route. We're not paving anything here. We're using country back roads. I'll show you more. We're using country back roads. We're using shoulders. We're building this to a horse standard. This is for horses, mountain bikes, and hikers. And so, as Rosie said over here in Cold Springs to me when I was over there 2 months ago proving the route, she said, Charlie, look over there on the south side of that road, that county road. We've got wide shoulders in Texas. They're 50 feet wide on either side of the asphalt. She said, we've been riding horses in that ditch for my whole life. If you put a trail through here, meaning if you just designate that as a route, we'll have 4 times the number of people riding horses through there because they can see a place for themselves. And so that's what we're doing, is taking advantage of the wide shoulders that are out there that connect the back roads in East Texas and back and through the hill country all the way out to Big Bend, here Sanderson. You might have heard that big ranch that got sold, the Brewster Ranch, $165 million a month ago, is right here, and that trail goes through here. The state of Texas owns that now. into Big Bend, up through the state, this is a national park, through Big Bend State Park, to Marfa, Fort Davis, up to Valparaiso Springs, Guadalupe Peak, and over to El Paso. That is a big, hairy goal, to create a trail across Texas such as that. And the reason that it hasn't happened before is that some 96% of the land in Texas is privately owned. And so what we're doing is we've defined a route, and I can do it right now on my bike, hiking, and a horse, and most of it I can there's roads parallel to it so I can drive on public land and in some private cases, private land. You can go from Orange to El Paso now. But just like the Appalachian Trail 124 years ago, Geary McCabe imagined this route from Georgia to Maine, and in 1938, a guy named Clinton Clark in California imagined the route that's now the Pacific Crest Trail. What we've imagined is this route that right now is on mostly public land, public space, but will over time migrate to private land. And that may sound ridiculous to you. You know about ranchers in West Texas. There's no way in hell they're going to let people walk across their property until you learn a little bit about the ranchers in West Texas. So I have done the whole 1,500 miles in my van. I have found where the gates are, we've proofed it, and we have other people out there now that are proofing the rest of the route. I've started going back and talking to ranchers and property owners along the routes. And since September, when we announced this project, and Texas Monthly wrote a story about it, and then a Fox News writer from Waco wrote about it, and some 20 other publications have written about it in the last 3 months. We have got about a dozen property owners that have simply looked at that black line and said, looks like you're coming through or close to my property, come by and talk to me. And so that's what I'm doing now, is going back and talking to those property owners about running the trail across their ranch. One in particular, I'll tell you about 3 of them, because this illustrates what we're doing and what we're finding once we've stepped out there. First, I'll go east to west, because this is generally the route we want to do. There's a CPA from Houston that owns a ranch right up here by Lake Livingston, about 300 acres, and he has hiked all those trails that I've talked about. And when we announced this, he said, Charlie, I'm Brandon Jacob. I've got a place up here. I want to be the first hiker hostel on the trail. And so Brandon has become my landman in that part of the world. Last week, I got a call from a guy who has 188 wells north of Houston, is a modest hiker, but sees the value of this kind of legacy trail, and is offering his land wherever we need it, crossing from Coldspring basically to Navasota. Right out here south of Fredericksburg, close to Comfort, there's a couple named, when they heard about this, a couple named Cobra and Beverly Garland. A nice couple, retired. They've been looking to buy a place in the hill country, 20 to 100 acres. And when they heard about the trail going through, they said, Charlie, let us know as soon as you get that trail alignment pinned down, because we're looking to buy a place and we want to be one of those watering holes you're talking about, because we're horse people and we're happy to have mountain bikers and hikers come through here. And so let us know when you get it pinned down. We're in the mood to buy real estate. So we've got landowners out there, we got people trying to buy land here, and then a great woman out here just south of Marfa, north of Presidio, named Penny Ferguson. Her husband is a district judge out there for 5 counties. They own a 17,000 acre ranch. She's a 4th generation Texan. When she saw what we were doing, she invited me to come out. She's got a guest house there called the White House. It's called the White House Ranch. And she rents it out for $450 a day. And it'll sleep up to 11 people. So it's a big house on a great ranch, and is that classic West Texas ranch experience. And she's trying to make a living in the ranching business. And so when it costs $20,000 a mile for a fence, or $35,000 for a new well, she needs to generate income. This project won't save Penny's ranch, but it will add another $5,000 to $10,000 a year to her income cycle. She likes that, and so that's part of that's what we're finding out there, is that we got people that are looking to share their ranch with us, or whatever they have, for a variety of reasons. One is they see that they understand the value, the legacy of this trail. There's only going to be one Cross Texas Trail. Some of them need to make money, and we have a business proposition for each one of those. My job as the organizer is I get to make deals with about 80 dictators across this state. And a dictator is somebody called a ranch owner he owns it all, and I'm negotiating from, will you give us this, and if not, how much is it going to cost? And that's the fun part about this. Let me share it with you over here. So we've got a lot of press, we've got a lot of attention. When I was sitting over here listening to that presentation Noah just gave, I'm clicking through my phone like I saw several of you doing. I got a $1,000 contribution set over there for this project, because people are sending us money. They're offering their time and the talent and the treasure for this project. We needed to raise 40 grand just to do the organizing effort here. We're 3 months into that. We've currently raised 60,000, 61 now. And so, we've got a big project, and it's attracting a lot of interest. A lot of people that have an interest in Texas pride, and well, here's how we do this, by the way. So that's what we're hearing. We've got people from horse. The most exciting people on this project are the horse people, by the way. They go to state parks and they go in circles. They're looking for the same thing that those of us that hike or ride mountain bikes are looking for, and that is the romance of remote Texas. The rugged, the rustic, the real Texas is what, and challenging themselves against some or all of that. Now, most people won't do it all in one goal. Most will do section hikes or day hikes, or some will never do the whole trail. But that's the magic, that's the value in having a long distance trail in Texas and in fact, most of the people that will be using this trail will be Texans. Just like in California, most people who use the Pacific Crest Trail are Californians. This has more mental health as well as physical health value than anything else I can think of as a steward of this state. So, to do this, we need to create watering holes. We need to take care to have, just like on the Appalachian Trail, every few miles there'll be a spring, there'll be a shelter, there'll be a latrine back up here, and that's generally speaking where people are camping each night. And so we're calling those watering holes. We've got 3 different types. So basically, we'll be, every 15 miles, we'll be setting up a watering hole. In some cases, we've got more water, it's no big deal. Out in West Texas, we'll be doing the same thing they're doing in Arizona on the Arizona Trail, and that is using technology, rain capture cisterns, and other techniques to collect water for hikers and horses and so forth using this trail. There'll also be, well, I'll show you the pictures. The types of structures that we're talking about will be built using local materials. This is part of the fun of this project, is getting to relate to people who are Texans, what real Texas is about, and for those from out of the state to see what real Texas is about. This is a basic watering hole. That's a 3-sided shelter on the Appalachian Trail. The difference in Texas will be it'll have the solar panels on the top, because as you notice here, we've got the shelter, we've got the toilet, we have a horse shed on the back of that, and then we have a Starlink connection run by those solar panels. We've got a pole going up. I've got, out in my van, I have the brand new mini solar link, or a Starlink mini, that I can set up anywhere and get full Wi-Fi access off satellites anytime. And we will have that as part of this system. These not to get into it, but there's a lot of tech companies that are looking to demonstrate how good they are at doing remote stuff. And so we're talking to the T-Mobiles of the world to set up these systems. That's what's fun about it too, because we'll have then, those of us that are hikers these days don't use paper maps much. We use Far Out and other electronic maps. And then so to have that at these rest stops and recharge our equipment and so forth is what these watering holes are about. And so that's every 15 miles or so. About every 50 miles, as you know, about twice a month, and this is a wintertime route, about once or twice a month, we've got a storm coming through anywhere in Texas. And so the ability to use that Starlink connection to buy for $50 or $40 the code to that door so that you could get in and out of that storm for that night is part of the reason that we set up these bunkhouses about every 50 miles. And then beyond that is at the crossroads, and again, this is out in West Texas, but instead of trying to get out on a lonesome deserted highway and hitch to Sonora for a night off the trail, we'll be setting up, again, in the winter, we'll be setting up temporary landing opportunities along the way, because there's some people who will, including me, that after spending a week on the trail are looking forward to spending $100 to $200 a night for a shower and bed and meal and so forth. And so that's what we'll be doing. So these are the watering holes. This is the infrastructure that we're setting up. It'll cost us $5 million to do this, and it'll take us 5 years to raise and spend that money. Can you imagine? I get to deal with the Big Bend National Park, Big Bend State Park, but they know how to do this. All of these other trails go through state and national parks, and that's not hard to do at all. The ranching network that we have out there knows what we're trying to do. We're trying to use those springs in the back part of their ranch and the wells that they had a long time ago when the grass was growing and the rain was falling. None of that's happening now. They don't have the cattle business is weak, if not dead, in a whole lot of West Texas. And so they've got the infrastructure out there that we can tap into, just like they've done it with the Arizona Trail, and do this project. So the our short-term vision of this, I told you, $5 million over 5 years. It's kind of fun, by the way. It's kind of fun to talk to people who have law degrees, engineering degrees, ranches, big bank accounts, and they're buying into it, and they're supporting this for all the right reasons. No one's trying to make any money on this, but we are trying to create something new here. We are trying to show that rural Texas is a very attractive place to hang out, but also that we've got people who have been around the world. They've stayed in youth hostels, they've hiked trails, they see this kind of activity, and they want to return to hospitality. They want to be a part of making that available to not only Texans, but visitors. And so we'll be doing the Sweaty Taste of the xTexas this next spring in those 3 parts of the state, which will simply be a sample of each one of the East, West, and the Hill Country. We'll be setting up, presuming I can raise $630 in the next couple of months, we'll be setting up and executing these basic water holes and showing people what that's about. Our ranchers are interested in hosting campouts, and so we'll be inviting people to camp out and get a taste of the xTexas. That's our team. My wife is in the middle. Robin Stallings runs xTexas, the nonprofit organization that we're running this through. That's our contact information, and that's the closing slide. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was amazing. So are you needing water holes direct in this section of Texas, or?
You know, yes, the answer is yes. However, there are lots of springs, creeks, lakes, stock ponds, cisterns, and so forth to tap into along the route. And so it's going to be a relatively straightforward thing in East Texas and Central Texas to do that. We've just got big distances and hot weather and dry weather out in West Texas. And so that's a unique set of challenges. But no, it's fun too, because I have just started the conversation with property owners, and not all of them are tickled pink about this idea. But when I talk to them about young people, it's the 30-year-olds out there that know what this is. Our generation has been in the trail building world in other states. A lot of the Colorado Trail, the Arizona Trail, several of the other statewide trails are less than 30 years old. And so this is going on. That's why we're getting we have the momentum that we have. I've got to tell you, I have a brand here. This is, I can only use it on fence posts and interns. So that's the thing. I'm enthusiastic about this, as you can maybe tell. As I mentioned, people are coming to it for the right reasons. I think I've planted the seed with you. You'll see now horses on the shoulder. Most of the time, they are up against the south fence on an east-west road. They're on the south side because that's where the shade is. That's where the tree line is, and that's where they're riding. That's all we're talking about here. This time of year, we don't need anything from the county commissioners or anybody else. The grass doesn't grow in the wintertime, as you well know, and it's a relatively, as a mountain biker, it's a good, challenging route. As a hiker, it's great. And so it's a low maintenance or no maintenance approach to moving across the state. And for some of us, there's a spectrum here. There are athletes and people who just want to take on big projects like this, and this is one. And then there are pilgrims. There are those that are looking for a spiritual experience on a route such as this. And you get that, you get to disconnect from whatever world you're coming from and immerse yourself in a simpler place where it's just you and your ambition to get up and hike whatever that distance is, and eat a meal, go to sleep, and do it again the next day. And after you do that for a week or two or a month or so, you notice that you've gotten skinny, and two, you've covered some distance and you've seen some amazing things. This kind of route, you have to earn the experiences on this. You can't drive to the places that I'm enthusiastic about. I can tell you another thing about some of these ranchers. Some of them have really amazing waterfalls and other geological and petroglyphs and other things that tell interesting stories about their place. And so in the past, in many cases, they haven't been willing or interested in sharing any of that. But as those people move on and their kids take over, sometimes they have a whole different approach and a whole different mindset. And so right now we're getting to go where we're invited. People are inviting us in and asking us to, because they want to be a part of this for whatever reason. And we get to do that. And it'll move. These big long distance trails that I've been talking about don't have final mileage markers, mileage numbers on them, because rocks fall, rivers flood, property changes hands, and so every year the route changes, anywhere from 20 to 100 miles in some cases. And right now, a third, I'm told, of the Appalachian Trail is closed down because of Hurricane Helene. And so you combine that, it's a sad story, with fires and heat and other things going on out west. And people are looking for alternatives. This is a winter route. Nobody wants to be on this route in the summertime. But in the wintertime, we're really only competing with Florida. And can I say that's good? That's all I have. Do you have any more questions?
I expect you're going to publish sections of this as they become complete or available, like your sweaty taste of Texas.
We'll do two things. One is we'll do the far out electronic guide, and then we'll do a printed version such as this for the Colorado Trail. And so this is about every 15 or 20 miles, they have a section, and it does the same thing that it's not quite as good, it's a different experience. I use this on the Colorado Trail, and I've used the electronic versions on others, and it's different, you know, good and bad for different things.
Is it on far out already? Have you published any?
No, because I had this idea in California in June hiking the the Tahoe Rim Trail. I've hiked a whole bunch of these, and I'm 66 years old. I figure I got another 10 years or so. And I imagined after, you know, you get into a trance after hiking a long ways, and you get to thinking about things. And it occurred to me that I had an opportunity to create something in Texas that is as grand as the places that I had visited elsewhere. And no one else had done that yet. And so when I'm going out, when I'm talking to these ranchers out in West Texas that have these amazing waterfalls that would be a national park in any other part of the country, in some cases they're saying, you know, how can we make this work for us? And so we're opening up those conversations for the first time. This trail will be different than those other trails I've talked about because of the ownership questions. But it also opens up all those opportunities for truly unique experiences that we haven't had in Texas as public citizens. The next generation will, and it'll be on this trail among others. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. That was amazing and very inspiring.
Okay. Oh, by the way, I'm going to put this over here. I've got this pen. If you buy into this and you like this, sign your name on here somewhere, which just shows that you support the concept.
We bring people like this in, like Charles in, to talk about a big plan, but this works with what we got going on in Bell County. They're trying to get a multi-use path trail through the different cities that connect from here to Land Passes and every place else.
Can I have the clicker, Charlie?
Sure.
So it's the whole part of being able to work together and as a community and as a group to get those trails made and done. Clicker. Oh.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your work.
So next we're going to talk about the agenda item number 9. Talk about the proposed amendments to the BPAC bylaws, and I'll hand that to Anita.
Thank you so much. There's several changes, recommended changes to the BPAC bylaws, and one of them is the name change from Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee to Active Transportation Advisory Committee. I know that at our last meeting we had some conversation about that. So as I move through these, we can vote on the changes independently or as a group. And feel free to bring up your points of view anytime throughout this discussion area, please. We're going to also, we're redefining the purpose and clarifying how we're going to accomplish the purpose. We're expanding membership. Over to the right, we're expanding our membership to 20 members. 3 of those will be bicycle representatives, 2 walking representatives, 1 equestrian, 6 municipalities, 1 county government, 1 for Fort Cavazos, 1 TxDOT Waco district, 1 public transit, 1 youth or youth representative of an organization, and then the other active transportation will have 3 representatives, and that would be a trail enthusiast, someone from a tourism board or a chamber of commerce, an ADA advocacy group, running events, or paddlecraft. Are there any questions so far about that scope before I move on to the next?
Is the name for TxDOT's advisory committee changed too?
Right now, it's still Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. The Alamo, the area agency, it's the Alamo MPO. Theirs is ATAC, and there's about 4 other organizations that have switched over to ATAC. I don't have them handy, and I'm sorry about that, but I did research their best practices as well. We also want to clarify the nomination process. So after these amendments are approved, any new members will be sent up through the policy board for final approval as well. We're clarifying our terms and creating an exit ramp every year around our September or October meeting. We're going to ask everyone that to resubmit their commitment to our committee. And at that time, if you want to leave, then, I mean, you can leave anytime you like. We hope you don't. But we just, you know, there are no terms, but we just want to create an exit ramp if you feel like your season's over. We've also defined ex officio members, and we're increasing our quorum to 50% plus 1. Right now it's at 33%. That's why we're helping with the exit ramp, because we really, you know, it's our heart for this committee. This is a public engagement committee, y'all. This is where the citizens of the community can really have their voice in what's happening in transportation. And so that commitment's really important. Clarifying the process for addressing attendance issues, which would be if you don't attend for 3 meetings in a row, then we'll be able to submit that to the KTMPO director to ask to be removed from the committee so that we can keep things moving forward. And also explain what happens when a chair or vice chair leaves their position before their term expires. And one of the things about changing the name and changing all these, actually making all these amendments to the bylaws, it's really in the best interest of the committee. And, you know, the idea that we're a forward planning multimodal transportation committee, you know, it's for everyone. And as and we're responsible to recognize the societal shift and do our part to really, we have an opportunity here to shape what is happening in our region through this committee and shape the culture. TxDOT's, on their website, an active transportation includes any form of human-powered movement and low-speed electric assist devices. And this category covers activities such as walking, cycling, electric bicycles, tricycles, scooters, electric scooters, wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, skates, and skateboarders, among others. And I'm just thinking about a lot of people in rural Texas. They use their electric wheelchairs and they ride on the roadside. And, you know, when we're developing plans and advocating, we should be thinking about those people too. Not only our bicycles and our legs and our horses and our paddlecraft, which are all very important, but we should expand and invite all those people to the table that use those low electric speeds for active transportation. Does anyone have any questions? And it's totally up to this committee as if we select that name and move forward with that. I'm a staff representative. I've done the research. I'm passionate about it, but it's totally up to y'all.
So one of the things we saw, I forgot the name of where we met Charles at the convention down south in Austin, was BPAC was very well known, but the buzzword and the new terminology was going towards active transportation. And I think with that, you're opening up a lot more avenues to get funding for different projects. When you start taking in everything into, you know, ADA compliant, is your trail multi-use path ADA compliant? Should it be? Well, if it is, then you're probably going to get a bigger pot of funding or different avenues. I don't do the funding. I just look at what possible things that we could get. I know we are, as a group, part of the process where we vote on what projects we deem necessary. Hopefully this year we get a lot more people involved in it. But I think by switching the name, that does offer more avenues to get different funding and help different communities accomplish their different projects. By encompassing all those activities, just not, pedestrian is good, but most of the people think pedestrian is walking. In my opinion, walking or commuting back and forth to school, stuff like that. This kind of is encompassing every part of what movement is. So that's all I have on that one. And then
Took the words out of my mouth, is get this committee, regardless of what it's called, involved in the funding decisions. Because we can sit here, I'm gonna get on my soapbox, Kara, buckle yourself in, been down this road before. We can sit here and talk about Charlie's wonderful vision for a Cross Texas Trail. If there's no money for it, it's not gonna get built. And if we come to these committee meetings and sit around and solve the world's problems for 2 hours, but we don't build anything, we don't spend the money, and we don't affect positive change in the community, then we're not gonna have members that show up. So I'm grateful that, we made the change during last scoring process, and you put it in here, providing input during the scoring evaluation of active transportation projects. Thank you. That's important. I can't stress it enough. This committee needs to be an active component, no pun intended, in those funding decisions. If you're not paying for it, you're not building it. So to emphasize this committee, I'm all about the name change, all about defining that purpose, is helping identify, prioritize, and fund the projects in our community. So that's my soapbox. I'm all for it. What I'm a little bit reluctant is to up the quorum to 50%, for just the reason I said. We struggled to get quorums in the past. Now, I'll say I'm preferring that we keep it at 33%, but I'm open to be convinced. Whether or not we go to a 50% quorum or not. I think I'm more comfortable approving all the changes except leave the quorum at 33% as it is now. But prove me wrong.
Is James online?
Hi, Anita, I'm here.
James, can you please speak to the quorum issue?
Yeah, hi, Jason. The quorum, the 50% plus one for quorum, that's like something that's mandated by the state, technically. And I know this is an advisory committee, so there's some flexibility, but in order to be above board and comply, that's something we need to change. And we're doing that across all committees at the COG.
So then the question becomes, we're opening the cap for BPAC membership or ATAC membership to 20 members. The 50% is going to be calculated off of appointed members. So if we only have 12 people appointed, then that quorum would be 6 plus 1, so it would be 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I can speak to that, yes.
Okay.
If there's a vacant position, it is not counted against us for our quorum.
That makes more sense to me then.
And that's one of the reasons that I looked at the membership and I thought about what this committee really is focused on, and it's public engagement. And that's why it is much heavier on public participation than relying on municipalities and county government. We want them at the table, but it's not mandatory. We can still make quorum with if it's a citizen-led committee.
I agree with everything you said. I think I've convinced myself. James.
I had the same question as you did.
Yeah, no.
Jason, have we missed funding opportunities in the past?
I think projects that this committee wanted to see funded didn't get funded. And could that be because there was a lack of emphasis and input? It was, we weren't part of the process. The last time we did open up and said to the members, here's all the projects that have been submitted to TAC for scoring. Here's the score sheet. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gary and I were the only two that returned the score sheets.
That's correct.
For this committee, we were the only two. I think there were some people on the committee that did it through their other part of their organizations and stuff that they belong to, and they did it through their municipalities and stuff. But the thing that came out of the scoring with me and Jason's scoring in comparison to what like the transportation committee does and stuff like that, we had some disagreements. Well, they made them talk about what our disagreements were, because I'm a cyclist. Some of those projects didn't make sense to me. And I think Anita, and it might be something to really quick touch on, I think Anita has a plan to get those looked at before we go voting on them again. It's not an easy process. James gave me about an hour class on how to do that judging, and I asked Jason a bunch of questions, and some of it was irrelevant for me. I don't live in Nolanville, or I don't live in Gatesville, or I don't live in Killeen, so it didn't matter to me if I could. I work in Killeen, and they need bike paths, hands down. But I also promote like seeing those projects that get done. Where's the matrix? Is it beneficial to the community? And that was part of the rating process that we went through. So, I mean, that's the biggest part that I see this community in the final at the end of the year, that we have some say in what we do. But I think we also have a say in how the community develops. Having Jason show up from the city of Temple and having the other municipalities show up and have the community speak to them and say, this isn't what the community necessarily wants or needs.
Or it is.
Or it is.
Right. I've had some frustration with that process in the past, and I think it's because I haven't seen feedback. The project we have prioritized have been completed or made progress. And I wonder if we could make that a future agenda item to say, here are projects we have prioritized. Here's where they are now.
I remember the first year that I started coming here.
Yeah.
We did the TAC, where the municipalities presented their top projects, and then they were scored like on site, and you kind of orchestrated all of that data gathering. But I wonder if there could be some hybrid of that, to where, since maybe hard for these guys to get into the shared link and to click through each of the projects and orientate themselves to where they are.
Yeah.
And then the personnel from those municipalities are also going to see like where the active transportation advisory comes into play and to their score. That's how it's going to.
I'm all about working on that process, because the first year, I think the BPAC just ranked 1 through 10 or 1 through 20. This is BPAC's priority. I can't recall off the top of my head to your question, but I remember there was what was the top 1, 2, 3 was funded through the TAC. So thanks for your input, but we're doing our own thing. That's part of any process. We could go back and look at what were those top 10 that BPAC ranked, what was funded. We can compare those, go for this last project call, and see, of what we did identify as BPAC's priorities, how did that align with tax and what got funded in the end. I think there's room to look at that spreadsheet, whether it's a straight rank 1 through 10, pick your favorites, and you vote. We're going to get a better ranking if we have more participation. With the last call, Geary and I scored. Okay, so it's got a Temple, maybe Temple Clean focus. And I'm kind of all over the community, so I'm generally familiar with it. But there may have been a project that a lot more people would have ranked higher, and that final scoring would have changed if we had more data points. If for some reason, let's say Salado had a project, and I didn't score it high, but 7 or 8 people on this committee did, theoretically, that project would have scored higher in TAC and would have been more likely to get funded. So it does come back. We need to encourage participation. I'm going to keep beating that. I'm not going to beat horses.
How about one more?
Don't do that, right?
How about one more step, Jason, in addition to what gets funded, what gets completed?
Right. Yeah, we can sit down and do that analysis and make that an agenda item.
I have a question. So regarding these new bylaws, under providing input to TAC and Policy Board during the scoring and evaluation of active transportation projects submitted to KTMPO for funding and funding consideration, do I hear y'all saying that you would like to add in and create a feedback loop?
I wouldn't as part of the bylaws. I think that's just more of how we.
It's something that you want to see happen, but it doesn't need to be.
It doesn't need to be spelled out in the bylaws.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're running a little bit over our meeting time, so I'm trying to keep things moving along. Is there any other conversation that we would like to have about our bylaws? Do y'all feel ready to vote, or do we need to?
I want to make one more point, and I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
With the change in the cap to 20 and that 50% plus one, could staff in the packet where we list, here's the appointed members, there's just some footnote for, current chair or future chairs, or whoever has to run the meeting, to look at that packet and go, all right, we got 11, we need 6. 1, 2, 3, we don't have a quorum. Because I know I've been in that boat of wait, look at the membership and try to do it in my head on the fly. If we could just put that, and every time you appoint a new member, then that little footnote on the packet just gets updated. That's just to make life easy.
Yes, I can do that. And also, Jason, and I'm sure that several individuals here in this meeting will attest to, I've reached out to individuals independently that did not accept the meeting invite. And I sent them an email or called or texted them to find out if they were coming. And so as a staff member, I'm committed to looking at that as well before we get here.
And just as new people that showed up, I know the people from Gatesville are here, and I think you probably found some of this informative for you guys. So, and that's what we're here for, and that's where we need to get everybody involved. So, any other things? Everybody want to vote? No? Ready? Recommend with proposal the amendments to the bylaws being changed as Anita laid them out. Was there any changes that are not up here?
One was removing the telephone option. I ran out of space, and I figured the telephone option was not that big of a deal. We still get to come to the meetings remotely with our camera turned on and be counted for quorum. But you cannot be counted for quorum with a telephone call.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the bylaws as presented by staff.
Is that Karen?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the motion is passed to approve the bylaws.
Thank y'all very much.
And we'll go right into the, okay.
Go ahead.
We'll go right into the next agenda item, and this goes back to Anita again.
Can you please say what the agenda item is, sir?
Okay. Regarding the active transportation master plan.
So the last time we met, I introduced the idea of our region creating an active transportation master plan. And we talked a lot about the different gaps in our trails and sidewalks, but we never really came to the conclusion if that's the direction that we want to go. So I wanted to share a few of our trails that are happening in Texas. This is the Great Springs Project Trail that starts at the Alamo and goes all the way up to the Capitol. And this one right here is, I think it's called the Red Line Project. And it starts in Cedar Park and goes down to Austin. As y'all can see, that's a trail with the little arrows there. This right here is our region, and it's squished up pretty tight, y'all. But those little orange things are historical markers. And then we have little bitty trails all throughout our region. And then we have a few state parks on the boundaries there. And here's another map of our trails without the city names, and you can see the little green. So we've got some things happening. And so the question is, we need confirmation of interest in developing an active transportation master plan.
Yes.
Is everybody on board with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yay. It's not a voting item, but it is for discussion. So, all right, we'll go on to the next one. This right here is the proposed plan development outline and schedule. Staff will begin researching and vision casting and goal setting to be shared at the February 12th meeting. Some data analysis, data collection and gap analysis. And this is where our committee is going to really become involved in this piece right here. We're going to ask for some active transportation maps and plans that the cities already have in their queue. And so we can start building from a city up to a regional perspective of what we're really looking at. And we'll also start some public engagement events, going out into the public. We're going to start that early and keep it going throughout the whole plan development. See what our community says about active transportation master plan, so that they can also have their input. And then we'll start the plan development around February the 13th. At the next meeting, we'll have a plan review around May 14th, and then we'll recommend plan adoption to TAC and Policy Board around August 13th, and hopefully it will be adopted by Policy Board on September the 10th. One of the things that it's really important, I know we're running out of time, but as we're moving forward, any thoughts that y'all have about what you want in an active transportation master plan, send us an email and we'll start collecting that. I mean, we need to hear from y'all what your views are. Will they all be written into the plan? They may or may not, but we definitely want to hear from our committee on what they want inside of this plan. We want to hear, what are your goals? What are your personal perceptions? Charlie, he's a visionary, and he cast a big vision for us. So I want y'all to think about these big, hairy, audacious goals and how they would fit inside of this plan so that we can really breathe some excitement and life into an active transportation master plan. And like I said, maybe everything doesn't get put in there, but who knows, maybe it does. So let's just do it. Do y'all have any questions about that? About the timeline? Okay. And we're going to move to the next agenda item, and I'll get that to you.
Agenda item number 11, regarding public input received November 2024. We're back in it.
Yes, thank you. We had a lot of public comments. Most of them were due to our 2050 MTP. We divided some of those comments out for the MTP and included the rest of them for our committees and boards. Two specific ones that were not related to that MTP development happened to be about someone wanted some project maps for what was happening in I-35 going through Temple. And I shared that with you and provided that. He was very appreciative. I think it was a construction or a developer that was interested in that. And the other question had to do with an accident that happened, a head-on collision that also happened, I think, off of 36 in the fall that had some fatalities. So we answered that. Are there any questions about our public comments here? If you would like to see them specifically, you can go and look inside the packet. They're all written out there.
Next agenda item, staff updates. We're staying with Anita again.
Thank you. There's a lot of activities happening in our region. However, I'm sorry I didn't have time to pull them all together. But I did want to highlight January 1st. Texas State Parks and Wildlife. They have their 2025 first day hike. And so there's hikes taking place all over the state of Texas. And I just really want to encourage you, go look at one and get involved. And this year, that's one of my little goals is to participate in that.
The one in our region is Mother Neve State Park.
Yes, Mother Nest. Yes, that's the one I'll be going to, actually. Anybody wants to join me? Feel free. This is our air quality. James, can you speak to this, please? Or Callie, do you happen to have any information about this?
Yeah, so the highest would have been 59 for Killeen and 73, and that was during the month of November. And then we're sitting at for the annual daily value of 68 and 72. So we've got a few that are a little bit over the standard, but it's coming back down like it usually does in the winter.
Any questions about that?
What's the yellow line?
The yellow, that's Killeen. Sorry, the legend's not there. And the blue is Temple.
We know why it's departed from the blue line in the last couple of years.
Yeah, there are two different stations that have it there. So Killeen is typically higher, probably because of the higher population.
Okay, agenda item number 13, member comments. None?
Happy to be here.
Anything? All right.
Oh, one other thing, y'all. This is my phone number, my personal phone number, and this is one of the ways that I want to help us reach quorum. If you would like to take my number down and text me yours, I'll probably reach out to you and just see how you're doing and just touch base with you about meeting attendance on a personal level outside of an email or a meeting appointment. Feel free to take that. And I will only text you during business hours, Monday through Friday.
That's it. Let's adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.